What if Africa was never colonized? The year is 1885. Berlin. Representatives from 14 European nations gather in a conference room. They're not African. Not one. But they've come to divide Africa among themselves. With pens and rulers, they draw lines on maps, creating borders that ignore geography, culture, language, and history. They carve up an entire continent as if it's uninhabited land, free for the taking. This is the Berlin Conference, the formal beginning of what historians call the scramble for Africa. Within 30 years, nearly the entire continent will be under European control. Only Ethiopia and Liberia will remain independent. The consequences will be catastrophic. Colonial rule will extract resources, destroy political systems, impose foreign languages and religions, and create artificial borders that will fuel conflicts for generations. By the mid-20th century, when African nations finally gain independence, they'll inherit economies designed to serve European interests, borders that make no cultural sense, and institutions built to extract rather than develop. The damage will take generations to repair, and to this day, Africa carries the scars of colonization. But what if it had never happened? What if, when European ships arrived on African coasts in the 15th and 16th centuries, they'd been met not by divided kingdoms vulnerable to exploitation, but by unified empires with the military power and political sophistication to resist? What if the slave trade, which drained Africa of millions of people over 4 centuries, had never occurred? What if Africa had been allowed to develop on its own terms, following its own trajectory, modernizing according to its own priorities? This isn't a story about African exceptionalism or European weakness. It's a story about what happens when a continent of over 1 billion people, rich in resources and cultures, is allowed to chart its own course. When indigenous political systems evolve naturally, when trade occurs on equal terms, when technology develops in response to local needs rather than foreign demands. What if Africa was never colonized? The answer isn't just about Africa. It's about the entire world. Because a free, developed Africa would have fundamentally changed global politics, economics, and culture.